know what it's like to be in this cell. I spent most of my adult life in and out of cells just like this.
The most devastating impact of solitary confinement, the most devastating impact, I should say, of incarceration, because the majority of people who go to jail, prison, juvenile custody, they're going to experience some form of isolation for rule violation.
One of the biggest things that we can do is we can change the perception that people have of what trauma looks like.
You know, the hope that's involved in it for our people that's still inside. It's a hope that is broken in there. They said that you can survive 4 months without water, 4 days without food, 4 minutes without air. But the second someone loses hope, it's over with. And I'm here to tell you, I got the real stories and experiences of men and women, men mostly, that I know personally lost hope while being in this tomb.
The school to prison pipeline is real, y'all. It is real. So people behind closed doors, behind prison bars, I just heard a story about somebody at the age of 14 never learned how to read. How is this possible? Because we are building prisons in part based on the illiteracy rate that exists in our respective communities. So for us to say these things don't actually connect, everything connects. Behavior is not something that just happens. So one of the things that we ask oftentimes is not what is wrong with someone, what actually happened to them.
Because it takes a level of empathy and compassion. That don't mean you got to live in there with me. You don't have to go through there and do that. Let me tell you that. I ain't finna own this trauma. Man, my trauma, that's what people do because it's been some trauma awards given out to people. Here go a medal. Just tell me your story. How bad did you hurt? Was you hurting really bad? Dang, he hurt bad. No, it's about how can we heal. And that empathy part definitely translates into therapy, things like that.
But what we haven't asked is, what psychological effect is it really having on them? To have limited human engagement. No access to music, for example, to art, right? No real meaningful engagement to engage your brain while you're isolated from humanity.
That I started to realize and started to make a connection on the harm that it was causing. So there's many things that I'm still affected by in my personal life today from being inside this cell. Many memories, many traumatic experiences, things that you can never forget that I've experienced from being in those cells. And as a person who's been conditioned to being in one of those cells most of my adult life, I know the feeling of getting used to being in this environment.
Is that the price that people should pay for bank robbery? They should be killed in prison?
Depending on how deep the wound is, maybe healing from that wound across their lifespan. Percentage is of people behind prison bars. How many of those people do you think have been impacted by trauma? At least 92% of people that are incarcerated didn't get the support they needed, in part because we oftentimes don't call things what they are, because we don't know what they are necessarily. We skate over pain as if it doesn't matter. And if you're a young person that's endured all kinds of hardship, including witnessing community-based trauma, including just witnessing, including having a parent that you are witnessing being abused, right? A caregiver. All of these things are deeply traumatic. And so as Hakeem talked about, right, if someone becomes incarcerated and they end up in solitary confinement, where do you think the majority of suicides happen in prison? They happen as a result of solitary confinement. And in fact, about 50% of all suicides that take place within prisons is as a result of solitary confinement. So if 92% of people that end up in incarcerated, don't get the mental health support that they need, and then on top of that, they end up in a cell 20 hours a day with no ability to communicate with the outside world. When my brother was in solitary confinement, we could not talk to him. There were no phone calls. There was no messaging through the app that I used to communicate with him on a fairly regular basis. There were no visits. So for days on end, he was spending 20 to 22 hours a day in the name of them protecting him. I need y'all to hear this.
So as a result, we ultimately been fighting for legislative change. Legislation that would introduce a bill as law.
Hi, it's Stephanie Chang, State Senator for Senate District 3. Congratulations to the Solitary Justice Project on having a successful event today. I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person, but I wanted to congratulate you on your event and also just say how much I appreciate working with all of you as Citizens for Prison Reform and a number of other organizations on legislation to address the issue of solitary confinement in Michigan prisons. Having heard some of the really horrific stories of people who have been negatively impacted or even died in solitary confinement, I'm really committed to continuing the work on this important legislation to restrict who can be in solitary confinement, to ensure that there are adequate checks in place on mental health and physical health, and also making sure that we're not limiting access to essential things. So thank you all so much for attending the event today. Please keep raising your voices, keep sharing your stories. Just know that you have a partner in me and others in the legislature who really are committed to making sure that this work gets done to address this issue of solitary confinement.